These days, Chuck Norris is mostly known as a meme icon, and if you only know him from the internet, you might assume he was always this massively popular action star, but that's not really what happened. The truth is, Norris was never all that famous in the West during his actual film career. Most of his movies barely made any money at the box office, and the ones that did well financially were often his earliest, lowest budget efforts that almost nobody saw in theaters. The films that actually made him recognizable to international audiences came out in the mid-1980s, and even then, their success was mostly driven by the video rental market. At his peak, he still trailed far behind contemporaries like Steven Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme. It wasn't until the 2000s, when politicians started handing him honorary medals and the internet popularized Chuck Norris Facts, that people actually started treating him like a legend. By then, his active career was long over. So how did a guy who was never really a major star end up becoming more famous as a meme than he ever was as an actor? The answer involves a lot of bad timing, some surprisingly smart business decisions, and one of the strangest career resurrections in Hollywood history. Chuck Norris started out as a middleweight karate world champion. In the 1960s, he opened a chain of karate schools, and because martial arts were gaining popularity in America, a lot of Hollywood actors ended up training with him. One of those actors was Steve McQueen, who became friends with Norris and eventually introduced him to the people behind Bruce Lee's film, The Way of the Dragon. That connection got Norris his first major role, playing the villain opposite Bruce Lee. The movie was a global hit, and suddenly Norris had some name recognition. He followed it up with another villain role in a Hong Kong film called Slaughter in San Francisco, but this time the movie flopped hard. The reviews were brutal, and Norris took a few years off to regroup. When he came back, it was with a low-budget American production called Breaker. The film was mediocre and didn't even make it into US theaters. At this point, Norris's career wasn't looking particularly promising, but then something unexpected happened. In 1978, he starred in an action film called Good Guys Wear Black, which cost only $1 million to make. The movie ended up grossing $19 million at the box office. For American audiences, this became one of his most well-known films. It's even referenced in the Expendables 2, where Norris's character name is a direct callback to it. Norris himself described Good Guys Wear Black as a turning point in his life. Agreeing to do the film meant choosing acting over his athletic career. At the time, he was working with Benny Urquidez to create a new kickboxing league, and taking the role meant abandoning those plans entirely. After that success, offers started flooding in. His next two films, A Force of One and The Octagon, each pulled in around $20 million at the box office. Everyone was predicting a bright future for Norris, and his earnings per role climbed close to $500,000. There's even a popular rumor that A Force of One owes some of its success to Keanu Reeves. The director, Paul Aaron, used to be married to Reeves' mother, and although they were divorced by the time the film was made, Aaron remained on good terms with Reeves, who was living in Toronto at the time. According to the story, they would often go see action movies together, including Bruce Lee's The Way of the Dragon. Supposedly, it was Reeves who convinced Aaron to take on the new Chuck Norris film when he was offered the director's chair. Aaron was mostly a Broadway director and wasn't particularly excited about doing a fight movie, but he eventually gave in. Whether that story is true or not, the film performed well, and Norris seemed to be on an upward trajectory. But then things started to fall apart. After 3 box office hits in a row, Norris's career began to stall in a way nobody expected. His next film, An Eye for an Eye, was his most expensive project at the time. It had the highest audience and critic ratings of any Norris film up to that point, but it flopped, earning only $7 million on a $5 million budget. Many people blamed the failure on a lack of major studio backing and terrible timing. It was released around the same time as An American Werewolf in London, which grossed $30 million and quickly became a cult classic. Norris's next action film, Forced Vengeance, also flopped, making about $1 million less than An Eye for an Eye at the box office. Apparently realizing something had to change, Norris took on an unexpected role in a sci-fi horror film called Silent Rage, where he fights a zombie. The movie earned him the best reviews of his career, and it wasn't exactly a hit, but it wasn't a bomb either. On a $4.5 million budget, it made $10 million at the US box office. Then came Lone Wolf McQuade in 1983, arguably Chuck Norris's most famous film. It didn't do very well at the box office, but it did manage to recoup its budget, grossing $12 million on a $5 million production. The film is a big reason why Norris is still remembered today. It features one of the 2 most iconic moments of his career, the scene where he bursts out of the ground in his truck. The movie also largely served as inspiration for the TV series Walker, Texas Ranger. But the main reason Lone Wolf underperformed theatrically was its budget. It was the most expensive film of Norris's career at that point, and its earnings, while decent, were fairly modest. Norris himself is a big fan of the film and always enjoys talking about his time working on it. He's made jokes over the years about his co-star David Carradine, saying that Carradine is as good at martial arts as he is at acting. Rumor has it that all of Norris's jabs at Carradine stemmed from their final fight scene in the film, where allegedly the two actors broke out in a real fight. Carradine was the one who started it, hitting Norris hard several times and continuing even after Norris asked him to go easier. On top of that, Carradine's contract stated he couldn't be killed in a hand-to-hand fight, which is why he was blown up with a grenade at the end of the film. After a string of flops, major independent studios turned their backs on Chuck Norris, and he was forced to sign a contract with the Cannon Group, a company that at the time produced extremely low-budget films aimed at the home video market. They were behind the American Ninja series and also supported Van Damme by funding his early low-budget projects, which eventually helped him break into major Hollywood productions. At first, Norris and the Cannon Group were doing very well together. His film Missing in Action grossed $23 million at the US box office on a budget of just $2 million. It was the biggest success of Norris's career. None of his other films ever made that much money again. So Missing in Action features the second iconic moment in the actor's career, when Chuck rises out of the water with his famous machine gun. The huge success of Missing in Action briefly revived Norris's career and earned him an offer from a major Hollywood studio. That studio was Orion Pictures, the distributor behind James Cameron's The Terminator and Paul Verhoeven's RoboCop. Norris's collaboration with Orion resulted in the action film Code of Silence. It's considered the best film of his career by critics and US audiences alike. Code of Silence became Norris's last major box office success, grossing $21 million on a $7 million budget. That might be because the script was originally written with Clint Eastwood in mind. Code of Silence was supposed to be the fourth film in the Dirty Harry series, but Eastwood turned it down. What's even more interesting is that Norris ended up in the film by chance. The reason was the halted production of the Cannon Group's Invasion USA. According to his contract, Norris wasn't allowed to appear in films from other studios, but Cannon's owners made an exception and let him work on Code of Silence. Norris considers it his favorite film. After the relatively big success of Missing in Action, the Cannon Group released 2 sequels. While the second film managed to bring in some money, earning $11 million at the box office, the third film was a total flop. Many believe Chuck Norris was one of the reasons behind the Cannon Group's bankruptcy. The small studio trusted him so much that it kept investing more and more money into his films, while also trying to expand and increase its yearly output. But their profits didn't follow. Despite the international popularity of films like Firewalker, Invasion USA, and The Delta Force, they failed to recoup their budgets of $9 to $12 million, which were huge for both Norris and the studio. Firewalker and The Delta Force were Cannon's biggest hits in 1986. But maybe if the budgets had been smaller, Norris's career and the studio's fate might have turned out differently. Sylvester Stallone also played a role in Cannon's downfall by starring in their most expensive film, Over the Top. By the late 1980s, the studio was crumbling. Film budgets kept shrinking. Creditors were growing increasingly demanding, and this led to a split between the owners, legal disputes, and the eventual collapse of the company. In the 1990s, the Cannon Group ceased to exist, and its film library was acquired by MGM. In the early 1990s, after a string of failures, Norris managed to break free from his Cannon contract and starred in the box office hit Sidekicks. While he didn't play the lead role, the film was entirely his idea, and he personally secured funding for it from Texas investors. That same year, he got an offer from CBS. Norris accepted and set out to conquer the small screen with the series Walker, Texas Ranger. While the show wasn't exactly a smash hit on American TV, halfway through its run, it averaged 12 to 14 million viewers. Today, that would be a phenomenal number for any network, but back then it was just slightly above average. For comparison, Magnum PI drew 22 million viewers, The X-Files pulled 20 million, and Friends easily topped 40 million. Meanwhile, on the well-known series Martial Law, which featured a crossover episode with Walker, Texas Ranger, was canceled after drawing only 11 million viewers. At the time, that was considered too low for CBS. Most likely, Norris would have been forgotten long ago since he never really became a huge star. But in the late 2000s, the internet turned him into a meme icon, and his popularity skyrocketed. Thanks to that new fame, Norris landed a role in the Expendables 2. Sylvester Stallone just couldn't pass up the opportunity. Norris was even asked to include one of the meme facts in the film. He let his wife decide, and she picked the one about the snake that died in agony after biting Chuck. Nowadays, Norris is doing great. In his 80s, he writes books, attends events, and openly criticizes double standards in the US. His story reveals something fascinating about how the entertainment industry works. The video rental era of the 80s and 90s created international action star recognition that theatrical releases alone never provided. Norris's films found their true audience through home video despite modest or poor theatrical performance. The Cannon Group's business model was low-budget action films aimed directly at the video rental market, and in many ways, they were ahead of their time. But the model proved unsustainable when they tried to scale up with bigger budgets. Norris's career demonstrates how timing, distribution channels, and cultural memory can matter more than actual commercial success or critical acclaim. His transformation from forgotten B-movie action star to internet legend shows how internet culture can completely rewrite a legacy decades after the fact. He's more famous now than he ever was during his active career, and that's a pretty remarkable achievement in itself. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Chuck Norris's career, subscribe and stay tuned for more stories about the unexpected paths Hollywood careers can take.